Hello. See. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'd like to give you a short speech on the Japanese language. I started studying Japanese about a year ago. I was dying for a long time to learn Japanese. And as you can imagine, Japanese isn't the easiest language to learn, especially for somebody who speaks Latin and or German languages like in my case. However, I think that it's a beautiful language that will allow me to understand a millenary culture that is completely different to my own. So, to start with, I'd like to highlight some of the features of the Japanese language that don't exist in European languages and that I find rather difficult. To start with is the writing system. The Japanese writing system does not use the Latin alphabet, but rather it has two syllabarians and ideograms. So let's start with the first, the syllabarian. It's the hiragana is a syllabary that children learn when they start school. And logically, it's the syllabary that I was taught in school. And it's used principally to use the particles, something that I'll delve in a little bit later. And with respect to the verb endings, in children's books, often they use them in order to emphasize the pronunciation. However, there are some ideograms that are considered that children at a certain age have not yet learned at school. The second syllabary, the katakana, it's the second syllabary that I was learned in school, and it has many purposes. Most notably is that the foreign words, writing the names of the animal species, for example, and also they use it to highlight certain words, something that we would use italics for in European languages. So both hiragana and katakana have 48 characters, and each one of them helps or is used to write one syllable. For example, there's one character for ko or for she. There's also characters for different vowels, A, E, I, O, U. Up until this point, we're on the same page. So far, so good. So even if there's almost 100 characters, or 98 specifically, they're pretty simple to read and straightforward to understand or write. The hardest part, or the most difficult aspect of learning Japanese, are the more than 2,000 ideograms of kanji, and they're needed to be able to actually read the newspaper. So each ideogram represents a word, yet the meaning can change when two ideograms are combined or juxtaposed. I would also like to mention the fact that ideograms have more than one meaning. Depending on the word, the ideograms that either follow the Japanese reading or the Chinese reading. What I haven't mentioned is that ideograms, generally speaking, are Chinese in origin, and Japanese has borrowed many words or characters from the Chinese. So, depending on what they borrowed, the Chinese reading of Japanese can be derived from other languages like Cantonese. Nevertheless, ideograms are not the only complicated aspect of learning when it comes to learning Japanese. If we delve into the grammar, we'll find other particularities, like I mentioned earlier. As my teacher would always explain, that Japanese could be very poetic and beautiful, that the words in Japanese have body and soul. The body of the word is the word itself, let's take sensei. Sensei means teacher. And so is the particular or the particle, because the particle determines the function of the word in the sentence. It's what completes the meaning, gives it life. It's a bit like the decline of German or Greek. However, I find it considerably more complicated depending on the function of sensei in the sentence. It could, or we should add one or a particle or another. In case it's the subject, we would add ka or ga. So sensei ka or sensei ga. Or we would have to say sensei ni if something is for the teacher, or sensei no when we want to express that something belongs to the teacher. Now, finally, I'd like to address the importance of register in the Japanese language, much more relevant than in European languages. There are 3 different types of registers. One considered informal, the other formal, and the third one civilized. Japanese society has been influenced considerably by Confucianism, and this has had repercussions on the Japanese language. When speaking Japanese, others are always above one. So you must be humble and put yourself below, in other words. So, for example, Japanese has 2 words for mother, haha and okasa. If you're speaking about your own mother, you have to say haha. But if you're speaking about someone else's mother, you need to say okasan. The letter O at the beginning of the word and the san syllable at the end means respect. And this is true of all family members. You need to be educated. You need to use respectful words and terms if you're speaking about someone else's family or family member. I'll give you more examples. There's a verbal auxiliary in order to inflate verbs in a polite way. To say, for example, good morning or thank you. One word. You could say that if you want to be respectful. The word where has a formal version of it so that it sounds more civilized. From what I've heard, there are Japanese courses for Japanese so they could learn this formal and respectful way of speaking Japanese, of speaking with clients or their superiors. So be careful if you've learned Japanese, because the way you speak with the way manga characters speak is considered very rude if you're in a restaurant or in a hotel, for example. Now, despite all these challenges or difficulties that I haven't mentioned, I hope I haven't scared you off. And I hope that one day you'll consider signing up for a Japanese course. There's nothing really more relaxing than sitting down, taking a notebook and practicing the strokes of a certain ideogram after a long day of interpreting. Thank you so much for your attention.